Hi guys, I am back. Of course, we know it's the holiday season and we know that this is a difficult time for everybody, especially with parental alienation. Right now, none of my kids are speaking to me other than the one that is in prison, and that's okay. He's getting ready to go for open heart surgery. He has a valve that is not acting the way that it needs to, and that's a worry for me. It's going to be a tough one knowing he's in prison because, they don't let you know when he's going to go have this surgery done. I love my son. Yeah, he's made some mistakes, but as we all know, our kids through parental alienation have had a parent torn from them. They've been inflicted with hate. His dad started getting high when he was 12 years old. Caseworker knew about it, but she chose to date him instead. Overlooked it. Participated in the parental alienation. Then she used that as a way that she could try to indicate me for neglect. Yeah. I gave up a 5-bedroom home that was my grandparents' home, which nobody anticipated me being willing to sell it. And when I did, I crossed a county line. It was so bad that I gave her 45 days of continuing to harass me. But it's real important that you guys know the laws, because during that 45 days, I knew she only had 48 days to hand a case that was open over to the new county. Now, mind you, they kept opening a case, closing a case. My ex kept calling in the same allegations. And at that point, I knew when I moved, they were going to have to indicate me for neglect. Now, neglect is a very, very broad thing. So if a caseworker decides to indicate you, whatever she says is what the judge hears, it's really hard to fight it because they can say anything. And if you don't believe me, look up the offices of Vince Davis. Look up, a lot with... Listen to his videos. Just look up Vince Davis on YouTube and you're going to see all these people who have lost their children on foundless allegations, which is something that I'll talk about later that I'm currently going through. Now, which I'm pretty sure was connected, but don't worry, I'm winning it again. I always come out a winner. But it's because I keep records, because I'm alert, because I'm vigilant. And you have to be when you're dealing with parental alienation. I highly recommend that you get on every support group that you can get on, because you're going to read stories on these support groups that are on Facebook that you could have wrote yourself. Many of us have been in situations where, there are some people that have charges against them because plans were set up so intricately that they now are in jail. They've had to spend thousands of dollars to prove their innocence. Some of these people are really sociopathic liars, pathological liars, sociopathic tendencies. They will go to any extreme to prove you are this person, that because you left them, you ruined their persona of who they were. You destroyed their life by leaving them. How dare you do this? And 21 years later, in my case, you're going to continue paying, and there is no stopping them for continuing to make you pay, because they are miserable, they're lonely, they haven't been able to move on with their life, their next marriage hasn't lasted, and over here, you're a healthy human being. So even though they may have convinced an evaluator, oh, she's this type of person, she's narcissistic, she's never going to be happy, she's never going to have a happy, healthy relationship, but meantime, you moved on. You found a happy, healthy relationship. You found a person to work with. They may have told the kids, oh, she'll never have anything because she can't manage money. Over here, you have a beautiful home, nice truck, camper. You're moving ahead. You're proving all these scenarios wrong. So guess what's happening? They're getting angry. They're going to keep going, keep going. So at one point, it used to be that we could get together for family grandkids' birthdays, things like that. All of a sudden, we weren't able to do that anymore. You know, it became even worse. On top of that, you have a psychological damage that's been done to the kids. So even if your kids grew up, and one thing that always hurt me, it wasn't that my daughter chose to go to her dad's on Thanksgiving or a holiday, even though I babysat for free, even though when her bank account was on zero, I may have gave her, even if my account was low, I may have still gave her the last $100 I had in my account. Even though my husband had it in his account, that was my last 100 in my account, and I didn't want to take from his account. I was always the one that did that. When my mom signed money over to me, my children felt entitled to that money and that mom didn't deserve anything. And I pretty much, it was okay. Mom wanted to pay for a car for my daughter. Oh, you don't have to pay it back. Okay, but that's within 5 years of you needing to possibly need more help. And I couldn't get more help from my mom because now my daughter, who's married, would have to pay that back. That would affect her marriage because now all this stuff that was given to you guys, guess who would have to pay it back? Now, she was power of attorney too, but I knew that would affect her marriage. They weren't helping to provide the care for my mom, but I was, okay? So I did a lot to help my children by taking on providing the care by my mom by myself to a point where I couldn't do it any longer. One thing I didn't realize, though, is the psychological damage that had been done. And I don't want to hurt anybody by talking about this, but I feel that I do need to talk about this for people to understand and protect themselves. It's so important because when my daughter was 14 years old, and I'm not mentioning names, she took 27 Tylenol out of a container, put the container back on the shelf. I will forever feel so horrible about this. I was out working as a therapeutic staff support person in the community with another child. I never answered my phone because, my ex-husband was home with the kids and I felt everything was taken care of, but I kept seeing these calls come through. Finally, I answer it to find out, hey, I'm going over to the emergency room. I guess I should. And he didn't realize how dangerous Tylenol was, and neither did I at that point. Her stepsister realized she wasn't acting right, kept proceeding to ask why. And of course, then she saw how I take that back, how her brother had asked her for help with a homework question or something, and then she saw how her stepsister was laughing and having fun, and she realized she wouldn't be there if her brother needed her tomorrow, or her stepsister would be devastated if she wasn't there, okay? So she finally confessed up to what she had done. She got over to the hospital. I'll never forget, it was a cold, windy, snowy night, icy in February. I get the call, she took 27 Tylenol. I had a kid out in the community I had to take home as if nothing had happened. You can't let some child or their family know that there was a mental health issue in your own family. Take the kid home, okay? I did not see it coming. That night before, it was about 10 o'clock, my attorney had called me. And a little bit of the back history was that her dad and his caseworker wife had her sit on a chair at every visit the year before and months before that when she had a visit. Her visits consisted having to sit on a chair. She had to listen to, you have to say your mom hit you, you have to say your mom yells all the time, you have to say your mom needs mental health help, and this is how we're going to get your mom the mental health help that she needs. She needs to go to an institution so they can help her mental health. And by you saying this, you're going to get your mom the help that she needs. And she was told what to say. Now, there was a reward if she agreed to do this, but if she didn't, there was a punishment of withholding of affection. Okay? So, Dad's going to be angry. Dad's going to yell. on these visits if you don't do what he wants. And meantime, you're stuck sitting on this chair while they walk around you telling you what you have to say to get you to agree it. Now, after these visits, she would come back from visits with her dad, totally rocking back and forth. I'm afraid I'm going to believe what happens. I had it documented by neighbors willing to go testify for me at court. They had seen this. She would actually end up in the emergency room. Her whole side of her body would go numb like it was a stroke. It was actually a severe panic attack. And finally, it got to the point I would no more than drop her off, and she would get hysterical at visits to a point where as soon as I got phone reception, I would be about 20 minutes away on a 45-minute trip home. I would get phone reception. Hey, she's so hysterical, you need to come pick her up. So then we had agreed upon, okay, we're going to agree upon this, that she doesn't have to come. Okay, that's fine, because he, meantime, had gotten custody of my son, who, and this is where it goes into, it's really important that you keep records. I knew if I did not move, I was going to be indicated for neglect because it's such a broad term. He married the caseworker. They kept showing up at my house at 8 o'clock. I sold my grandparents' home, crossed the Fulton County line, made sure I sent a registered letter upon receipt. I got a copy that they received it and signed saying, as of such and such date, I moved. I kept records of all the times they called and harassed me for 45 days, okay? And then I was waiting for it. You have to be prepared, okay? I get a letter saying I'm indicated for neglect. Doesn't tell me why, and they don't have to tell you why when they indicate you. They owe you no explanation. It's all up to the caseworker. The caseworker is your judge and jury, and whatever she hands to a judge is what it comes down to, okay? So, me being me, and always staying 2 steps ahead, and you can feel free to email me at angiedicosimo@gmail.com for any questions ever. angiedicosimo@gmail.com, because another issue I'm having, apparently people are having fun turning things in on Messenger. My Messenger barely works. I'm always refrain from messaging. I am constantly reporting it. I get no explanation why at all, and it will be down for 2 weeks. So I think there's a lot of false reporting going on to say that it eliminates me being able to participate with messaging people on support groups, messaging people back. That's okay, because I just give out my email. No problem here. Angie's got it covered, always with the backup. But anyway, what I was saying was I documented all this. So when I got that letter that day, I was prepared, and I walked into the new county and I said, we have a problem. He met the caseworker at a time she was to investigate him. Now understand, when somebody's licensed, and should they go to date somebody they're investigating, they lose their license, okay? It's unethical. But because she did not hold a license, which 95% of your caseworkers are fresh out of college, they do not hold a license. Therefore, what happens is it is up to their supervisor what happens to them. The supervisor can actually decide if they continue the job, if they stay on the case. She was able to continue investigating him, stay on the case, and then start investigating me as his fiance, girlfriend, new wife. And when I reported that to the county commissioners, which county commissioners are the boss over top of children and youth, her supervisor, which was her boss, which if you have a problem with anybody, a normal problem, say you go into a store and a clerk mistreats you, you go to the supervisor. If their supervisor doesn't get anywhere, then you would normally go to the big boss of the company, right? You would go up the chain of command, right? or if you have a problem at your job. That's a normal procedure. So this is what I do, okay? Believe it or not, I get called into a court hearing threatening to take my kids because how dare I threaten her job? This is how bold they were. The judge basically called me a biatch by comparing me to someone who was a pathological liar, a problem in the community. I was treated horrible and called every name in the book that day. No decision was made. The next day in the afternoon, I call and I'm asking my attorney, did I lose my kids? What's going on? Oh, Angie, your case was dismissed. After he told me how highly he thought of this caseworker and how much he trusted her opinion and discredited me that I was just a piece of trash for how dare I do something so horrible and how degrading that was. And I've never had anybody stoop as low as you, Mrs. So-and-so. And then when I requested a new judge after he says this, because you're biased, I was refused. But getting back to me walking into the new county caseworker's office, I handed them all the material, everything on my case. I said, this is where I'm at. They're trying to indicate me for neglect. I'm prepared for it. I was waiting for my letter. They became irate. They had me go back. I met with the supervisor in that office. I presented everything very calmly. They said, can we come up to your house right now? They opened my refrigerator door. They said, we'll be back. 2 hours later, they called me. Mrs. So-and-so. Yeah. You don't have to worry. You can tear that letter up. We said that they could undergo a very thorough investigation if they wanted to continue it. She was using the system to harass you. She was using the system since they couldn't get custody through court. This was how they were going to get custody of the kids, we feel. You did nothing wrong. And therefore, we left them know if they wanted to continue to indicate you that there was going to be consequences on them. Secondly, we are not going to let him use the system to harass you. If he wants to make repeated complaints into our office, we are not going to come up to your home for the same complaint that we open and close repeatedly. Third, if we have to come up for a new complaint, we will not bring our car up that everybody knows Children and Youth has pulled into your driveway. And fourth, if we continue to get the same complaints over and over, we're going to let you know not to let your guard down. But we feel that he has some dangerous tendencies and you need to keep an eye on your back. They helped me get counseling for my daughter and counseling for me, and they were wonderful. Fast forward, I'm getting married to my second husband. We bought a beautiful home. We had just got married. Everything is wonderful. All of a sudden, sexual allegations are filed on my second husband. Supposedly watched my stepdaughter have relations with an older boy. We had allowed somebody that got kicked out move into the basement. Good Samaritan thing, you know, he gets kicked out, nowhere to go. We have always, and anybody I've been with, we feel that if somebody gets kicked out, has nowhere to go, you don't go to church on Sunday and then forget who you are during the week. So if somebody has nowhere to go and we have a place to put you and we've been blessed, hey, there. You know, before this incident that I'll go over a little bit later, probably in another video because it's pretty long, our house with my current husband was the neighborhood hangout, which meant we did foster care. A lot of your foster kids are not good at making friends. But you know what? You get a stipend. So if the neighborhood kids are over and we order pizza, if I make supper and their parents, you know, are running late with their meal because they've had to work and I'm home all day, I'm going to invite them to eat if it's okay with their parent. And they can still eat, but we eat a little bit earlier. We used to, with my husband's one job, we would eat like at 3:15, 3:30 our supper. And a lot of the kids coming out of school, they were just thrilled with that. If I go to the store that has really good pre-cooked chicken and it's really reasonable, I provided chicken for the neighbor kids. And it gives those foster kids a chance to learn social skills. It's really encouraging for them to have those kids over, to have friends for the first time. Some kids, when they're coming from their environments, have never had a chance to play outside because parents don't want them to know how they're living or what's going on in their house. So it's really important to encourage those relationships. So you have to understand, we're a very open house, and my second husband and I followed that same pattern as my husband and I do. You go to church, it doesn't stop there. You still open your home up to somebody who might need it. You know, like now, we have a lot of empty bedrooms in our home. There's a lot of elderly that can't afford their oil. I don't want anybody sitting in a cold house that's elderly. So if somebody needs a place to go that can't afford their oil, don't sit in a cold house, because you're more than welcome to come stay with us, you know? And we're fine with that. We do have to be careful because of my daughter. I don't want something happening to her. You know, if you have a record or a past, we have to look at that. But, you know, my house is open. And my house is open to anybody that may have grew up in foster care that doesn't have a mom or a dad now and says, I never had that opportunity. I'll be your mom or dad. So will my husband. You know, that's the type of people we are, and that's the type of people I want to be. I want to give back to the community. So, but getting back to the situation, so we had these sexual allegations called in, and I can't praise the new children and youth in that county, how they protected us. Of course, the state police came in with a search warrant. They got called up to the house. And at first they're like guns blazing and somebody's going to jail tonight. But they were willing to listen when I said, can I ask a question? And I said, did she sign the complaint? And they're like, no. She said it was too far to come. And I'm like, I started laughing. I said, you idiots. And they looked at me like, what? You're calling us an idiot? We're the state police. I said, is that the difference from a misdemeanor than a felony? And then I caught their attention. I said, she sells real estate, and she was in the trailer that she bought fixing it up across from your barracks. She wasn't even up where she said she called from. And then I asked if I could go back to the file cabinet. Will you walk back with me? And I showed where there was false allegations 5 years prior. She got a $500 fine, 10 hours of community service. And I said, she's mad that we got custody of the daughter. I said, on top of that, I said, we bought this beautiful home in a nice community. She's jealous. She felt that because she had a daughter with him, she should be moving into this home. On top of it, I have an ex that causes a lot of problems. And I'm pretty sure they have teamed up together. And at that point, their eyes were open. And of course, the new county children and youth were there at this point. We're familiar with my ex. And of course, at that point, they realized what was going on. And then they were able to catch her in some things that did not add up. She ended up with a $500 fine, 10 hours of community service. But it got so bad that my ex actually, after my daughter had tried to suicide attempt, okay, this is all around the same time, was so desperate to get custody of my daughter. It wasn't enough that hearing got dismissed. It wasn't enough that, children and youth had protected me, okay, that I didn't get indicated. Now, that phone call that came in, my ex, a year after he said she didn't have to have visits, he's not making my son, who every time I went to pick him up, oh, I wanted to go to a friend's house, Mom. Oh, I can make $5 an hour at the dirt track race. And even though I went for custody of him when I made the move, even though he was finishing up his last 2 years in high school, I wanted him to know, look, I know what your life is going to be when I move, because your dad's going to be at her place 45 minutes away. It came down to he had $5 a day to eat. There wasn't food in his house, but his dad was staying at the girlfriend's house and he was by himself. Yes, he felt abandoned, and he felt abandoned by me. But when we went into the courtroom, My attorney was so irate because it was a well-rehearsed speech. Basically, he told the judge that I hit him, but they spent a lot of time rephrasing questions, and his sentence was always the same. They couldn't get him to rephrase that sentence. So that says you've been told what to say. You're going to say it one way, and you're not going to change the sentence. They knew what was going on. The judge gave his dad custody. Okay? Now, that winter, my son did not have a winter coat. My attorney said, with what was said in that courtroom against you, you do not go buy him a winter coat. He needs to know you were the one that provided all his care, Angie. He needs to know the consequences of lying for his dad. It killed me not to go buy him a winter coat. But he was refusing visits with me. He was angry with me. He had lied against me, which could have sent me to jail, could have got me on a child abuse registry. My attorney was very firm. He has made his bed, Angie. What could I do? I didn't go buy him a winter coat. Now, I know my parents were going behind my back and putting food up there. We're taking food. What could I do? It kind of gave me a sense of relief. We would go out to eat, and my youngest son would not eat when we went out to eat at buffets because he knew his brother didn't have food to eat. And he was hungry. Tell me this is not emotional wreckage to a family. Emotional damage. Even to the younger son, who now refuses and feels guilt. I'm with Mom, I'm going out to eat at a buffet, but my brother's not eating. Tell me this does not do damage in a family the whole way around. Okay? Now, getting back to my daughter. So she's now at the mental facility. Thank God, it was the worst feeling because I'm at the hospital. It's a snowy, cold night. Find out that she's now hit the point where if she needs to have the treatment for liver damage from this Tylenol, it came across the helicopters cannot fly. There's no way we can get her by ambulance in time to the hospital. Hershey was the only place that could administer the treatment. My feeling is, why can't you tell them what to do? Why can't you give them a chance to administer this? Because you're just going to let her die if it's too late. And I'm sitting there petrified. Of course, I'm calling Dad, who at this point isn't answering. I'm calling. I find out, well, we turn our phone off at night. What parent turns their phone off at night? If you love your kids, what if there's an emergency? Do I ever turn my phone off? No, because I want to know if there's an emergency with my kids. Oh, we turn our phone off. So I finally get a hold of him the next day. And of course, it's a waiting game because we finally find out, look, we think we're in the clear, but we have to watch her for 24 hours, 48 hours before this next hospital. We have to get her blood count down to a point, make sure it does not spike again. We can't even take her to a mental facility until we know, and it's just a waiting game. So, of course, I let my ex-husband know this. What does he do? You're not calling me. You're not giving me updates. Do you understand this is a waiting game? Okay? You can come over here and sit and wait. I have no problem. But this is a waiting game. It can spike, it can go up, and all I can do is sit here and wait. So then he starts calling the hospital, complaining to them I'm not giving him updates. So then they come back to me and say, could you please tell him to stop yelling at us? And get him to understand that there's no understanding that, this is a waiting game. I said, I've tried. It's not working. Now understand that this woman he's with is a caseworker who should technically understand this and be able to explain this to him. So then I start calling when there is more information, and he's not answering his phone. So I call. First thing I know, then I have a state trooper calling me and saying I'm harassing him for calling too much. And I'm like, oh my God, is there anything I can do right for him? Because at this point, I'm just like, I have no clue. Try to explain to the state trooper, I don't even remember who it was. Do you understand? I just went through catching hell for not calling. Now I'm trying to call as there's more information coming through. Now he's not answering. And now you're calling me that I'm harassing him. Oh my God, I don't know what to do. Do you want to talk to the hospital? Because they just asked me to explain to him that there was no information. Now there's information and he's saying I'm harassing him. I'm like, this is impossible. But this is parental alienation and harassment when you leave somebody like this. Okay? They're going to take every opportunity. And this is what they do. Now, when my daughter got to the mental hospital, it came out that when he said he was going back to court and taking me back to court, she panicked. She said she would rather kill herself than take a chance of hurting me like her brothers had, the two older brothers, because they completely lied in court. Their perception of me was what their dad's perception of me, of what he felt because he was so angry I left. They had the same perception of me conveyed to them and convinced to them. They didn't see me as the loving mom. They saw me as his perception as the jilted husband, angry, mad that I left. Okay? My other videos tell you why I left. Working 20 out of 24 hours, but told I wasn't working hard enough. By the time I would get supper ready, could finally sit down for a break, that was my time to go get him his snuff. He would pour a huge glass of soda with ice, not drink it, and then hand it to me when the ice melted, get a fresh glass, and tell me I could have that glass. Or sometimes I had to pour it for him. We'd be watching a movie, he told me how I had to lay, and then if he wanted something or wanted me to get him something, he would actually bump me and I'd roll off the sofa, which, believe it or not, my daughter told a counselor how much that ticked her off, that I was treated that way. There were times my oldest son would come up and punch me really hard on the arm, and when I said to my ex, we need to discuss this, you must have done something to deserve it. So I now realize you told him to do that to me because you didn't have the guts to do it to me. You knew how to hit you back, but I couldn't hit my son back. Okay? So, my other videos go into that a lot more. But if this is the first one you're watching, that will cover it for you. So, of course, the mental health facility was irate when they heard that, he dated the caseworker. They're engaged. They have him come down for a meeting to address, look, if you pursue this going into court, this isn't going to do her any good. And mentally, you're going to break her even more. He walks in and he got escorted back out pretty much. They had to end that family session pretty quickly. First off, they were stunned that it was legal and nothing could be done. And of course, when they checked, they were completely stunned that legally there's nothing you can do. She wasn't licensed, so yeah, it's legal. They had to back off of it. But he walked in and said, I have all the connections now. My wife, when her dad was alive, he was a county commissioner, had all the connections. He died, so now I have all the connections. He couldn't grasp there was no connections that I used my dad for in custody. It was what it was based on what it was with the first custody evaluation, which said that, he was a little slow, that the recommendation was that there was limited visit with my youngest son. There was no overnights with my youngest son because I had left when he was only 3. So there was a lot of protection with the time that my youngest son was there, but there wasn't a lot we could do with the older kids, but they were protecting him. There was no overnights. So like I would take him early in the morning, pick him up at 6. The next day I would take him early. There was no overnights. I was highly intelligent. I was very well capable. Based on what my ex said, it showed some narcissistic tendencies, but understand that was my ex, that you could never make me happy. I'd never be happy with anybody. And I'm being honest about what the eval said, which is kind of funny now that I'm so happy with my husband and a very happy person, and it's just really funny. Um, and of course, I had changed jobs and worked really hard because I always had to do what I had to make money. It wasn't that I'm an unstable person, but when you have somebody who the money's disappearing and you're like, where did this money go? Where did this money go? And I could sit down and I could show you everything I spent and have that was groceries, that was gas, this was the electric, and this is what I made. And then you're saying, okay, you withdrew X number of dollars. Where did it go? And they refuse to tell you. You're increasing what you're withdrawing. Where is it going? That was not me squandering the money. And I had every right to be an angry person when I'm working 20 out of 24 hours harder and harder. You're going golfing with the buddies. You're going on a fishing trip that you can't wait to go on, but we don't have a family vacation. You're carrying a grudge that we had to buy a family vehicle. You didn't get the truck that you wanted. I'm doing daycare morning to night, and you're telling me I can't have a dishwasher because you want a John boat. That's selfish. Completely selfish. So there were reasons I had the personality I had. Um, but bottom line of it was he would not back off. So we get to the hearing for him to have custody, refused to back off. At this point, my daughter's still a mess. She's on meds. They actually wanted me to put her on lithium. She came home on lithium. I realized the side effects and I said, no, can't do it. I can't give it to her. She came home the first time, realized she was still suicidal. And so they ended up putting her back in a second time. I actually had to get rid of the psychiatrist we had, and that I had to write him a pretty nasty letter and take her for a second opinion because his feeling was I needed to be a stay-at-home mom. And that just does not work. You don't sell your family, the whole family, down the drain, lose everything financially, especially when you've got attorney cost and you're going back to court. That makes no sense that you lose everything. You have to maintain a home, a roof over your head, and you have to balance it, and you know what you need to do. So I wrote him a pretty nasty letter about you need to wake up and realize and smell the coffee type of thing. And of course, a few weeks later, I had to take my son back for an appointment for his ADHD meds. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh man, now I got to go in and talk to him. But anyway, I had gotten her in with another doctor, psychiatrist, immediately. And he admitted her. And he thanked me for taking the time to get in to see him because he said the other doctor totally missed it. And you are exactly right. She's still suicidal. But anyway, I got in with the new doctor. And so I go back to this old doctor, and he called me in first. And at this point, I'm sweating it because I really unloaded on him how I felt. And I was stunned. And he said, sometimes doctors need a wake-up call. What happened with your daughter was my wake-up call. You were right and I was wrong. And you're right. Sometimes people have to keep working, and sometimes you can be a fantastic mom. And even though you were working, you caught what was going on. And I am so sorry for what I did. So he completely apologized, thanked me for giving him a wake-up call that he needed, and said, it was a true wake-up call because things could have really gone bad. And he said, I really appreciate that wake-up call, and I needed it. So, sometimes when you say something and you say it from the bottom of your heart, know that it's not always bad. It can be a really good thing. But anyway, she went back the second time, and I had to be very firm with her, and it was horrible taking her back. She called me every name in the book. And of course, once again, the Children and Youth Agency was right there backing me and telling me, you're doing fantastic. What you're saying is exactly what she needs to hear. Went down and visited her at the hospital. And of course, on the visit, she gave me a hard time. And of course, they backed me and said, you are doing fantastic with what you're saying to her. You're holding your ground, but you're letting her know you love her, and you're doing what you need to do. Was she always happy about it? No. But we got her home. She had to stay on meds, and psychologically, it really damaged her. This is not fair to the kids, what parental alienation does, and he refused to stop. So we get to the court hearing, and of course, this judge who thinks so highly of this caseworker, okay, is so one-sided, and he refused to hand my case to another judge in another county that would be fair. He appoints the custody evaluator that the caseworker wants. Now, my idea of this is she's obviously worked with him. If she has such a good recommendation, she's obviously worked with him. I suspected that. He's backed up for 9 months. So 9 months, my daughter's gone through hell waiting for a custody evaluation, not knowing if she's got to go live with her dad, who is determined to make her hate me with untruths. And she's seen how bad her brothers hate me. So, and her and I were close. So, we finally get to the custody eval. Of course, it takes him another 3 months to get it done. Custody eval comes up, gets done, and it's totally opposite of what the first eval says. We get back to court. And of course, what he wants to do is, because her and her brother are so close, of course, they can't pull one without the other. And her condition is so fragile that he wants to come back in 6 months, but I should have the kids pulled. I'm low intelligence. Now, mind you, I was very intelligent on the other one. Showed I was stable on the other one, but this one's saying I'm not stable. Completely the opposite of what the first one says. It's kind of like they switched the names on the evals, recommending that I have limited visitation once we switch it in 6 months. And I basically had to stand up in the courtroom and refuse to leave, saying, look, my youngest son socially is not real. He was very much to himself, didn't want to make friends, wanted to stay home to himself all the time. Look, he loves football. He's going to be in one activity. And of course, the judge is trying to say, all these moms that just want to put their kids in activities just to interfere with parental time. No, I was not doing that for that reason. He deserved one activity out of the year he could participate in, and he loved football. And it was good for him. And he was learning to socialize. I was the mom that did the carpool 90% of the time because with my job, I could work my hours, I could do it in therapeutic staff support. I could make my hours around the schedule. So my car stunk. You didn't want to ride in my car during football season because it stunk like football sweat. But that's what a good mom does. You just kind of suck it up. Use some Febreze. And sometimes Febreze mixed with the smell of football sweat. Did you ever do that? And it makes it worse. Oh my God. You have to put your windows down. But anyway, I did the football things, and I was going to make sure that he got football if that's what he wanted. So I basically fired my attorney that day because he wasn't going to make that happen as we were getting the results. And I knew in 6 months I was going to lose custody, and then the judge ordered that the first eval be destroyed. I was already told the day I went down for the evals, oh, by the way, I've worked with Nicole, but I can do this and do it ethically. But you have the right to refuse. After we wait 9 months, I could refuse. After the judge said I had to use this person, who he obviously knew from other court cases, worked with Nicole, said I had to use him, but I had the right to refuse using him. Tell me that the system isn't connected the whole way with connections. You're going to need to watch for that with parental alienation. You're going to need to use truthfinder.com, $50 a month, but I have found you can get it for $7.99 if you check that you're going to do it and then decide not to do it, and then they'll offer it to you cheaper. You'll learn all these strategies to save you some money, okay? Been Verified's another good one. You can be your own private investigator. Maybe you have to pay $300-400 to join the local country club for a month, 2 months. See who hangs out with who. Learn your connections. Use Facebook. See who's connected to who. Luckily, my dad had been in office, so I knew who was friends with who. And now I will talk about how I got it, because, see, when they order a custody evaluation, it belongs to whoever ordered it. And even though, like on this one, because I was having to pay for it, and this is the other thing, I didn't want this custody evaluation. I thought the facts spoke for themselves. But when he the first custody evaluation I hadn't paid for, so I had no rights to a copy of it, okay? I had nothing from that first one, and the judge ordered it destroyed. So the judge was in on it. So there was no record to say that they had just reversed the names to show that it was going to be destroyed. I outsmarted them. We had a break in court, and I ran down to the office where it's kept, and I said, hey, I need a copy for the second half of court of that first custody eval. And of course, they printed it right off because they thought that it was in a hurry, that it was needed. Yeah, I got a copy, but I didn't take it up to the courtroom. I put it in my purse. And now I had the copy showing what they did. You have to get crafty and manipulative, people. You have to. They're playing a game that's not fair. You have to figure out how to play the game back. So, second half of court, he's trying to figure out, meantime, he's thinking, I'm this horrible person. My ex has just been so mistreated by me. And the thing of it is, once the person has used everybody, they let their guard down. So the evaluator comes over to me and says well, you've had every Christmas. And I think it was, he wanted every Christmas because I had up to that point. I looked at him and I said, no, I haven't. He says, well, that's what it says in this court order. I said, no, because I didn't think it was fair. I always alternated that to be fair. And I saw the look of, oh my God, I've been played. And it was too late. He gave his testimony. He realized how played he had been, but it was too late for him. So I kept my cool, and it's real important you keep your cool. It was really hard because I have a tendency to fly off the hook. So at that point, I go to Chambersburg. Now, mind you, I did get a copy because here's the other thing. The judge informed me the total cost was over $13,000 for these evaluations I did not want. I was a single mom. Not only was I dragged to court 4 times, 5 times a year on false allegations they never proved, I had to pay for my attorney. But now you just hit me. He informed me that I had to pay half of it. And when I approached and asked that the county pay for it, I couldn't pay for it. Here's all the more I make. Here are my bills. I was told, no, you're going to pay for half of it. Because I couldn't get along with my ex. I didn't know if he had to pay for his or not. And I'm sure as a county caseworker, she got a pretty good discount as a courtesy. But I had to pay for my half. $7,000 almost as a single mom. They were making me pay. Don't worry, I got him in the end. So I now have, because I had to pay, I got a copy of the second custody eval. What do you think I did? I go to my own custody evaluator for a second opinion. I go over to a wonderful man, custody evaluator, where I live now in that area. I showed him both custody evals, and he was irate, beyond irate, because it was clear what happened. You couldn't deny how the system was working to aid them. How it was being played unfairly to her advantage because of her connections, not to the best interest of my children. He wanted me to file to go back to court, and my attorney refused to do it. You know why he refused to do it. And if you think that they don't talk before you go into a courtroom and have everything prearranged, you're wrong. It's all a game, because if all this stuff gets settled and they do what's right, all these attorneys, do you think that they're going to have any cases going into court? Do you think they'll need the extra judges for family court? Do you think all the attorneys are going to make money? Do you think they care about what really happens to the kids long term? Because the answer is no. Do you think they really go to heaven when they die? Do you think they have a conscience? Because my answer to that is no. But he was irate, and his advice to me was, you need to go to the Judicial Review Board. You need to turn the evaluator into the custody that did the custody evaluations to the Psychological Licensing Board of Pennsylvania. I did both. The only thing that saved the judge was the fact I did not have the money to pay for all the transcripts of the last few hearings. I couldn't do it. Financially, I could not do it. Had I had that money, I promise you that judge would have been disbarred and not sitting on his bench. But it was enough to scare him. Because my son came back from a visit with his dad and said, I don't know what happened, but the court said that my dad better never walk into that courthouse ever again to file any more petitions. He is not allowed to walk in to file anything. Now, for me filing on the custody evaluator, I got a letter back from the state of Pennsylvania that said, because so many that testified over the age of 18, they refused to sign to release the records of what was said. I also found out that he should have never, ever taken in my 2 adult children, who obviously were parentally alienated and had made their decisions. He used what they said as basis to remove the 2 younger kids. They were already parentally alienated. They made their decision. It wasn't up to them to make the decision for the youngest 2 based on how they had been brainwashed. This custody evaluator used their opinion to form an opinion on me. Yeah, that was biased, but that was how they were going to win. And he knew what he had to do because he was friends with the caseworker who he had worked with. He should have excused himself from the very first beginning, but his intent was to do her a favor, and that was really clear. But what it said from the state was, look, it was not a waste, you filing this report, because you are the 4th complaint that there's no way you guys have known each other, could know each other. Therefore, the 5th complaint that comes in, we've notified him. We get one more complaint, your license is pulled. It's going to be publicized in the paper. There's no way these people knew each other, but we have a pattern that's going to be established with the 5th complaint. What's saving you is the fact that nobody over 18 is willing to sign for us to get all the records of the custody evaluators, because custody evaluators are pretty much protected. So if somebody over 18 doesn't sign, they can't go in and look at these records. Okay, so they have an added protection with the State Board of Licensing, which he banked on. What he wasn't banking on is the fact of establishing patterns. So even though this custody evaluator thought he was protected, he really wasn't, because now there's 4 complaints against me. If I do it again, there's 5 and I lose my license. So even though you think filing a complaint might be a waste of time, it's not, because you set patterns, okay, with a custody evaluator. And that's what you need to remember. You set patterns. So it's going to take you reporting to get somebody to set those patterns. And it's real important that you follow through with that. And that's how you're going to win. So at that point, there never was another custody hearing to move my kids in 6 months. But the damage has been done. Okay. Now, I refuse to keep my daughter on lithium, and I think that that was a mistake, because the side effects of the side effects. But, you know, there's always been, one of her friends said to her one time, you have this fantastic mom that will do anything for you, yet all you do is criticize everything she says, degrade her, and put her down. She didn't even realize that she was doing that. And she's done it. Even when we were close, everything I said was degraded and put down. I have been there when she had gotten pregnant at 17. I was her biggest support. I gave her a place to live. I bought diapers, formula. She will get mad at me. She got mad at me after I did everything for her when she was 17. Her dad wanted her to abort the baby. And I was very much, you will not do that. And I provided everything for her and the baby. At about 9 months old, she got mad at me, went to be with her dad or her dad's baby father, and then she would have nothing to do with me for 6 months. She kept that baby from me. After they lived with me and I provided all the care, she was able to do her schoolwork. My husband, my third husband now, was there, took her to doctor's appointments, did everything, babysat so she could go to school. I wasn't even there available when she graduated. 6 months she did not speak to me. Finally, I got a call, I miss you, I was wrong, but I missed 6 months of my granddaughter's life. She comes back, promised she would never do it again. I attached to my granddaughter. I provided all the babysitting for 12 years so she could work, never had to pay 1 cent for babysitting. I'm a grandma. If you're not going to pay me for something I love, I ended up due to some very serious health issues. I had to go out on leave. There was maybe a year that she had to worry about babysitting while I was working. Because my current husband was able to babysit, we were able to work it between our shifts. And then before my mom got Alzheimer's real bad, she actually helped with babysitting too. But for the bulk of the 12 years, it ended up me having bad health issues. I ended up on disability. Even though my health was really struggling, even when she got pregnant with, he's now 7, up until last May, I provided from the time he was born all the babysitting for him. Okay, up until last May, every single day I had those kids, sometimes on the weekends too, while she worked. I love them with all my heart. Never once did I try taking those kids. If she had problems in her marriage, she lived here. When our house was full of foster kids, I actually rented her a place to stay. When she got locked out of her house, things were going bad in her marriage, and I don't want you judging him, because sometimes we don't know how to get out of a situation. I chose to go to an attorney and say, hey, how do I get out of this marriage? We share a house. I don't know how to get out of it because, what do I do? And when he heard the situation of what I was living under, we went to court and the court ordered him to leave based on that separation. And that's the proper way to do it. But I also had to spend money. And if you're tight on money, you might not have it. Her husband chose to lock her out and he didn't know what to do. And I do understand now when he was asking me for help in dealing with things, I didn't understand what he was saying of the things that she was doing because she didn't show me those things. I did not find out that she was telling people negatives about me. And it was, all of a sudden my neighbor a few years ago, her and I were so close. We're taking care of our moms with Alzheimer's. We were like sisters. And all of a sudden, one day I went over and this doctor I was supposed to go talk to about my mom that he couldn't fit her in is jumping all over me for not giving my mom food, drink, water. And I'm like, that had to come from the neighbor. And her and I had this big fight, blowout, and things got really bad. And I didn't know what happened for years. And it really ruined our good friendship. And we were like sisters, soul sisters, because we were in the same situation. We're trapped in our houses, taking care of our moms. Come to find out with this latest incident that happened, which I will do a new video of, because this one's going to be long, but I will do a new video of that one. Anyway, she was told by my daughter that taking care of my mom was so difficult, and my mom was treating me so bad, and she was. And my neighbor had seen how bad things were. Other people saw how bad my mom was treating me. And a lot of people don't believe things that I went through growing up, and it was very well hidden. And I love my mom dearly. And, you know, sometimes we've had things happen in life when we grow up that my mom loved me. She didn't realize what she was doing. And I understand that. And I love my mom. She did the best that she could. And I saw a really good video on YouTube the other day. It says, how do the kids come out of a house being so different? And the guy says, but understand, you weren't the youngest child, you weren't the oldest child, you weren't the middle child. And each child is treated different because of the age and the expectations. Okay? Think about it. Think about the age when somebody has somebody. Sometimes when depression hits, it might not hit till you're 30. How old were you when you had the youngest child? Okay? Depression sometimes makes you short with somebody. Yell at somebody. Look at a scapegoat for how you're feeling about yourself that day. You don't mean to do those things, but sometimes that's how it comes across. And if you're sensitive, you pick up on those things. I'm a very sensitive person. So it's a two-way street. But getting back to what happened was she actually told the neighbor that I was withholding mom's medication. I was withholding food and drink. And that way mom would pass away because I just couldn't take care of her anymore and I couldn't find a home to put her in. That was so untrue. So untrue. Okay. What happens with Alzheimer's is they forget how to swallow. Anybody, even with Alzheimer's, has a right to refuse their medication. And my mother had that right to refuse it. And I documented it. I contacted every agency. She's refusing it. They came in. They verified that, yes, she refused it for them. Their advice was to get a notebook and not tear out any pages. I did that. I documented the date, the times that she refused it, okay? And you could follow that all the attempts that I made. Also, she was diabetic. And they forget that they just had a can of soda. So we started a process where she would come out of her room, grab a can of soda, drink it within 10 seconds, I swear to God, gulping it, throw out the can, go back to her room, come back out, get another can. Diet Pepsi, and this can be educational if you're taking care of anybody with Alzheimer's or diabetic, has a laxative effect sometimes, okay? Now, if you're diabetic and you're going through eating candy that everybody thinks it's okay to bring, or that you might have sweetened cereal for your young kid and you're going to inhale that cereal and forget that you just ate that. Now you're drinking and inhaling that Diet Pepsi and you're crapping yourself and you don't make it to the bathroom. You're not good at cleaning yourself up. What happens? Your sugar goes down to 40. I have a hard time knowing what the insulin is to give you. You're also going to get UTIs. When you get a UTI and you're older, it causes hallucinations even if you don't have dementia. That is a side effect to UTIs as you get older. Add dementia to it, those hallucinations can be really, really bad. So when it comes down to limiting food, limiting drinks, she can have as much water as she wants. That's not a problem. But the diet's important. Making sure you only have so much food available and the proper food available, that is being responsible as a caretaker. It is not me trying to limit food, but to my daughter, so many people were told, and I think my son, part of him hating me right now, is my daughter also contributed. Not only was he hearing things from his dad, but he was also hearing things from his sister. So now you've got dad who has, well, you know how your mom is. That's one of the easiest alienation tactics. You know how your mom is. And he's actually done it in front of me at parties. You know how your mom is. Well, no, how is she? You don't have to say anything farther because it's a misleading to something negative. That's all you have to say over and over. That misleads them to think something negative. I've heard him do that, okay? So she told so many people this, so many people. And it's heartbreaking to me to know that people think I was trying to kill my mom. I tried so hard to provide the best care that I could. I did not want my mom going to a nursing home. When I saw her going downhill, I stepped up immediately. When I was going over and she would make a meal for my sister, they would leave and go home. She could not remember how to clean it all up. I cleaned up from the meal that she cooked for them. She would never invite us to come over at the same time because she couldn't cook. She could not handle cooking for 3-4 extra people, and I knew it. That's why I never went over and said, hey, how come you're not inviting us over? She couldn't handle cooking for more people. But I always made sure I went over and cleaned up after they left because I saw that she couldn't. I started finding she was going to the basement, wandering around an awful lot, but she was locking her screen door in fear of somebody breaking in. There was no way you were going to get in her house if she fell. And I would call several times a day and find her in the basement wandering around. That was not good. The real final chapter of her coming with me was she would go over to the post office to get her mail, which was right next to the elementary school. There is only a very fine rope that separates it, okay? And she called me laughing one day. You won't believe what happened, Angie. I'm like, what, Mom? I hit the gas, I guess, instead of the brake. I don't know what happened. I got confused, but if somebody would have been walking or coming, I'd have killed them. I shot out and I just kept hitting and hitting. I went faster and faster. She had confused the brake and the gas, and she still wasn't sure that she had done that. She didn't know what happened. At that point, I knew it was time to take her license. I did get her in with the doctor, and he said it's time to take her license. And that was a final straw for me. Now, my sister disagreed, but I had been following things pretty much from the get-go. I had taken FMLA at work, which meant I gave up a week of vacation. Even though I was having health problems, I had a new baby, I actually gave up a week of vacation to take FMLA for my mom, which they were mandatory 80-hour weeks at work, pretty much where I worked. I had health problems. I really needed those extra vacation days. But, you know, you make the choices you need to make. And I did. I did the very best I could. And even when I went out and had lymph node surgery, it was really frustrating. The doctor said to me, I put you out on leave. I don't understand how you got lymphedema because I put you out so you wouldn't have to do anything, and you still got lymphedema when I cleaned the lymph node tracts. Because part of me being so sick after I had my daughter, they finally found when I had boils under my arm, they actually thought my cancer came back, and it turned out the doctor had actually taken ovaries at C-section, told me it would be a piece of cake, and I couldn't find anything on it, so I believed him. They were afraid my breast cancer was going to come back because it was only a year after I had breast cancer that I got pregnant, and I was estrogen positive, and my personality was, I joked and said, you did a partial mastectomy. I'm not going for radiation or tamoxifen. We'll see if it comes back, because tamoxifen causes uterine cancer, and I also know radiation, you know, and the healthy breast can cause cancer and damage the heart. So I was like, it was an early stage. You can shove it where the sun doesn't shine. We'll see if it comes back, and then I'll decide on radiation and putting poison in my system. So the doctors weren't happy with me, and I didn't mean to get pregnant, but it just happened, and I wasn't aborting my daughter because that was one of the first things they said was, you have an abortion, you're going to have a healthy child, or you're going to have a healthy you. And, you know, if one cancer cell's missed, it's going to come back. No, I wasn't aborting my child. My husband would have a healthy part of me that he loved living on healthy versus, when it's your time to go, it's your time to go. And doctors don't like hearing that God's in control. And I felt that God meant for this child, to be here. Now, thank God the cancer was in 2009 and, or 2010, but I've been cancer free for my daughter's 10. I'm cancer free 11 plus years now. So it was meant to be. I got cancer so they could take my birth control and I would get pregnant. She was meant to be here one way or another. She was coming and this was meant to be. She's straight A's and I'm happy. It was meant to be. But anyway, he took ovaries at C-section. I almost died after delivery. Because you can't shock the body that much. And I later found out you only do that to give somebody an extra amount of time, because it would be like somebody that maybe wanted a week or two with their baby, and the risk of it is so severe that, okay, if the body survives it, then you just gave them an extra little bit of time with their child, because it's such a high risk that the body can't handle the shock. And my bowels shut down. I had toxemia prior. My blood pressure went even higher. And then they gave me Vasotec, which I've told them Vasotec sends my blood pressure higher. It sent it higher again. Now, finally, after 3-4 times of this, they have it documented. Don't give her Vasotec. It sends it higher. But of course, you have to prove to medical that you know what you're talking about. Now, I've scared them so many times, it is thoroughly listed in my records. But it took quite a few times of me. The last time I had 5 doctors surrounding me and terrified. And one even rubbed my back, and he was really good looking, and I thought, hey, this isn't so bad. But, but anyway, he made that decision. I ended up with MRSA. It settled in the lymph nodes. They didn't catch it till it had settled. And during that time, my mom was very demanding. She would not even let me sleep in. She had to have things her way. And I ended up going over right after the surgery. And that entire month I was off, I spent packing her up from her house and moving her over to mine. And that went from 8 to 5 every day. That I was supposed to be on leave. I could have spent the time with my newborn baby, but I moved her over. I go back to work. Okay. I'm back to work, and within a few days, she had called my sister and paid somebody to move her back. A few weeks later, my arm is swelling uncontrollably. And that's when the doctor said, I put you off so you didn't use it at all. I now have permanent lymphedema in my arm. But I bent over backwards to do everything I could for my mom. I have no regrets. One Easter, I brought my mom home. I finally did have to put her in assisted living. When I put her in assisted living, it was to the point where she had fallen 3 times in one day. And part of the problem when he took ovaries at C-section was I also did not know that your hormones after you have a child go back to a certain point where they tighten up the ligaments. Your ligaments are loose so that you can deliver the baby. Your muscles and things can stretch. And what happened was, because he took the hormones away and I had this huge plummet of hormones, shock to the body, nothing tightened up. So when he sent me back to work, and he knew well that I did a man's job, I would throw cups weighing 40 pounds up over my head. I would pull carts that had 40-pound bags, 9-10 of them on a cart. I would pull totes of yogurt that weighed between 300-400 pounds on wheels. I was strong. I mean, beyond strong. And I did 80 hours. I also was taking college classes in criminal justice because I love working with kids in the system. I loved working at Abraxas. So this was kind of like where I worked was kind of like the money was good. I had an ESOP account. I was building up retirement. And then I could go work where I really wanted to work and what I wanted to work, because I don't see me ever retiring, okay? And that was with problem kids in the juvenile system. And then at some point I would do foster care. That was my plan of life. Um, and then I go back to work and the pain is just incredible in my back. Not only do I have this arm that is just swelling, that now I got diagnosed with lymphedema, limited use of the arm. My knee is killing me. My feet are killing me. They're deforming beyond deforming. So at that point, I'm getting multiple diagnoses now. I'm to the point, if I miss one more day of work, I am not going to have insurance. I'm going to lose my job. I've already got a note that I can only work 40 hours. People at work are angry because now they've got to pick up my overtime, so they're mad at me, not realizing how sick I really am. I'm not realizing how sick I really am. So we start the testing with MRIs, and basically I have osteoarthritis. I'm now diagnosed with rheumatoid, which, because of the lack of estrogen, it caused a lack of vitamin D. I had reached a point where I was actually suicidal, but I don't believe in killing yourself, because God put us here, and it's up to us when, it's up to him when we leave. And secondly, I would never hurt my family. I called the doctor back that did this to me, and he refused to see me even though I said I was suicidal. And I called another doctor, and he's very much telling me that you need to get in here right away. Don't call Brooke Lane. Don't go to a psychiatrist. I know what's wrong. Of course, I get in there and I find out that what's going on is, when he took your estrogen, nothing firmed up, okay? And you had hot flashes morning till night. I had everything at a 10 of menopausal all at one time, so you know what that's like. The hot flashes, I was a very outgoing person, and somebody would come near me and I'd be like, get away from me. I stink, because in 5 minutes I was soaked after a shower, and it didn't matter how much I showered, put cologne on, I stunk because I had sweat everything out. So he took blood work, and he called me when it came back and said, I don't know how you kept from offing yourself. Now, meantime, I've taken care of my mom all through this, and I had no vitamin D. It was very minimal left. Vitamin D. Without vitamin D, you have major depression. You basically should kill yourself. Most people commit suicide. I hadn't, and I was still providing care for my mom. I knew I couldn't. She needed me. I could not let my daughter say, why did my mom not love me enough to kill herself? I couldn't let my husband, who went through breast cancer with me, was humiliated as I told doctors where to go, and stood there with me. I couldn't do that to him. I loved him too much. And I couldn't find a time to do it where my daughter would be, I couldn't let her unattended. So there was no way I would do that to her. None. And that kept me here. But anyway, I ended up having to pay for bioidentical hormones at that point. But he got me straightened out on that. But at that point, I had bunions on my feet that had to be corrected surgically. That was one of the farther out surgeries. That was to the point where it wasn't that bad, but it was bad. But that did get to a point where I could barely walk. My knees were bone on bone because osteoarthritis did one hell of a job on them. I had discs go out of my back that kind of landed on the spinal cord nerve, so they had medicated me pretty thoroughly on that. And I have bone spurs breaking off that sometimes do hit the nerves. I have really bad osteoarthritis, degenerative disc. I now have osteopenia hitting, okay. I brought Mom home for Easter, one Easter, because I wanted to spend Easter with her from assisted living. Went to lift her off the toilet. I tore my rotator cuff. So I had to have that fixed. That's just some of my health issues. But during the course of this, I was approved for disability. My daughter is so brainwashed now. She says I'm a hypochondriac to everybody. Now, her dad calls me a hypochondriac and says that. However, my daughter doesn't know what that term means. Hypochondriac is somebody that thinks they have all these issues and really doesn't. Mine are documented by test, blood work, MRIs. I've even had an EMG because I have very little nerve feeling. The EMG shows no reflexes in my lower legs and feet. And she calls me a hypochondriac. Where did that come from? Her dad. Because her dad has drilled into her, your mom's a hypochondriac. She called me a fat ass that never worked a day in my life. She went from being my best friend, that when my mother died, and there's been little things like throughout the years I did not catch. Remember how I said that I fought for my son to play football and fired my attorney? So, my son, who no longer speaks to me, that my current husband was willing to put him on his insurance, kept him on his insurance till he couldn't keep him on any longer. We did that willingly. My mother signed her car over to him, okay? Because her car had such low miles, I knew that car would be so important to him and his family that he could hang on to that car for so long. And if you don't have a car payment, you can afford more for a mortgage. And if you have a family and it's going to help you afford daycare if you don't have that car payment, I paid, even though he had an accident, wrecked the first car, it jacked my insurance from $100 and some a month. It jacked that car insurance to $550 up. So when I went out on disability, I still paid $550 car insurance every month, knowing that was going to help him in his future. I really couldn't afford it, but I did it. Okay. My daughter, who had all these mental health issues younger, that we were best friends. Throughout the years, I noticed my son would come home from college when I went and got him. He stayed here. But then after my neighbor and I had that battle, and Mom got bad to one time, he came down for a visit. I thought he was staying here, and then he decided to stay at his dad's. And of course, when your child comes home from college, what do? You make a lot of food. I had a big pot of ham pot pie on. Had fresh hot bread. I didn't make it, but I got some to make. And I am so happy to see him. And he walks in and he says, "Oh, I'm going to eat with my dad." And then my daughter says, "Well, I'll be here with my family." And then she comes in after I continue to make all this food and says, "Oh, well, I'm going to eat with Dad." I was left with all this food. My one babysitting mom came in and she was irate. "I just cannot believe how bad your kids treat you. I've never seen anything like it, Angie." And I was devastated. I cried. I was so hurt. I didn't know what was going on, but now I understand it. So fast forward last year, I'm told that one of the reasons my son's mad at me is I didn't go to any of his football games and I didn't participate with him playing football. What? Well, I went to all of your games that were home. I was the reason you got to play football. But understand that your senior year, I was a very sick individual. So there were times, and I had a newborn baby. So a lot of times till I got off work, I would go to pick up my daughter and she wouldn't be there. You know how you have the sitter that you say you're coming home, you have somewhere to go, and you knock at the door and they're out wandering around and you're texting and you're calling and they're not answering and you're stuck waiting. But when you work at a facility that all of a sudden will call a meeting, you don't have time to go get your cell phone and call because they demand that. They have no respect for you as far as giving you time to call the sitter. No respect that you have to pay $1 a minute or that it's hard to find a babysitter past a certain time. I had to accept and not lose the sitter that I had, that, hey, she has a life too, and she might have to run somewhere. But I would take her and go to the game as soon as I picked her up. Now, there were times because of the arthritis, I was in so much pain. Could I stay at that game past 10 o'clock, 10:30? No. I had to leave early, and understand I had to be back up at 3 o'clock the next morning to go to work. And if I was late or I missed a day of work, I lost my insurance. And with all the health issues I was having, I could not do that, especially if the cancer came back. I had a young child that needed me. So you have to prioritize. But I got to as much as I could possibly get to. I did as much as I could. Plus, I'm taking care of my mother. There was one game that they haven't let me forget. I was late and he got hurt with his shoulder. You know why I was late? It was because I had had the breast biopsy that diagnosed the cancer. I was on my way down from the breast biopsy, and I was a little bit late. He had broken his collarbone, I think it was, and my mind was on the fact the doctor's office called as I'm driving down that route and said I needed to come in 8 o'clock the next morning and bring a support person. So at that point, you know what that result was if you need to bring a support person. So I get to the game. I'm not thinking clearly. I finally look up and where's my son? He's not out on the field, and I don't see him on the sideline. So I start asking questions. They're like, oh, wait, he hurt his shoulder. He's over there. And at that point, then I was like, oh, wait, he hurt his shoulder. And I got with him and everything. They haven't let me forget that. I think that was a legit reason to be late. On top of that, had it not rained, I was going to fill in at the later game to actually work the concession stand. Did his dad ever work a concession stand? No. It was always me. So this is what parental alienation does. My daughter was feeding into him all this stuff, and it goes into gaslighting. So here she is, that I thought she was my best friend, but she's having these moments where this stuff is coming back, I think, that was brainwashed into her. As an adult, he's still brainwashing things into her. Well, your mom did this, you did that. He's gaslighting her, that obviously is giving her false perceptions of me. And with her not taking meds, because at this point, she's no longer on meds. She was at one point diagnosed bipolar. She now will tell you she hasn't been. That mom doesn't know what she's talking about. I never was, and she'll argue with you. Okay, we all have our rights to our false perceptions. I'm not going to argue. I know what I heard. You can feel what you heard. So, fast forward, she then, after mom dies, goes on to, it shocked the hell out of me that she actually overdosed, having 2 children. I never saw it coming. But she overdosed. She spent 3 days on life support. It broke my heart. 28 years old, she overdosed. 3 days on life support. This is what parental alienation does. She spent a day and a half on the mental health floor. Guess who she called to come get her out? Because, you see, I care about her. I love her. I don't use her to get even with somebody. But you can tell the parent that has a mission. Because guess who jumped to the call? Guess who came over? Guess who got her out of the mental health floor? Now, anybody that's ever had to get anybody off a mental health floor knows they're going to ask you, does the person seem to be in their right mind? What do you think of the person's mental health status? So, what do you think? Unfortunately, He said whatever he needed to. Yeah, she's in her right mind. I think she learned her lesson, and he brought her home. He dropped her off. She didn't know where she was going to go stay. I was in a bind because we had a house full of foster kids. It was during COVID. I can't put these foster kids on the street. She had never gotten her clearances. She could have stayed here if she would have got her clearances, but she drug her feet on that. Her ex-husband and her had split, but he put his life on hold. Now, mind you, they both had gone their own way. They both had gone with other people. But you know, it's a double standard. It was okay for her, but not for him. But he put his life on hold, and he took her home with him. She gave up the apartment that she had, and I thought it was a mistake because apartments in the same school district are very hard to find. They take a while to find. But, you know, it is what it is. You made a decision, and he stepped up to the plate, and I will always give him credit for that. And, of course, that makes me the bad guy. So I will continue on another video what happened next. I think it's really important, but I think you're going to need a break, and this is a long enough video. But it's really important that you see how parental alienation affects into the adulthood. And this is my perception of everything that happened. This is the truth of everything that happened through my eyes. If they want to make their own videos, they can. They don't have to watch my videos. But if they choose to, they need to know things from my perspective of how I saw it. And maybe it'll open their eyes as to how things were done to them. I can only hope. But you know, my job is to be there to help educate other people, to be there if other people need it. You can message me on Facebook, but I'm going to tell you it has been a constant issue where I am constantly being banned from messaging on my Facebook account. I think it's them reporting things just so I can't reach back to people. I had to set my account to private. You can send me a request. I do screen them very carefully because I have had my daughter try to reach out as different people just so she could have access to my account. She's actually gotten onto support group pages I'm on, and I've had to find that, you know, even on support groups, she's trying to kind of like get on there and try to find anything she can against me. She actually made a fake page, which was very detrimental to me. Put my name, my face, things that were not true, made it sound horrible about me. I tried reporting it to Facebook, and it met every criteria for harassment. And while I can't message anybody on Facebook and they won't tell me why, anytime that they do this, they told me it did not meet the standards, and yet it met every one of their definitions. But it is what it is. Yeah, all I can do is say, you have to keep fighting. You have to keep protecting yourself. And, you know, hopefully you can see I was the quietest child in school. But I became a private detective. I became somebody who was willing to do whatever I had to get the records I needed. Dot every I, cross every T. And I will do another video probably later today or tomorrow that goes into more detail of how hard you have to work all your life, because this isn't going to end when the kids grow up. So even though you might have a relationship today that's bumpy with your kids and think, well, I beat it. No, you didn't, because the ex is just waiting for his chance, and you cannot let your guard down. So I will do another video, and I want you to have a great day today. And the next video you're going to find even more interesting. It's a continuing story of my life. Thanks.